All right, so what do you think, Jason, is the number that, if in fact the Pac-12 stays intact with who they are now without UCLA and USC, is there a number per year distribution based on the next TV deal that has to be at a certain point? Otherwise, there's no chance?
Yeah, from what I've heard, the number that's been floated is mid 30 to low 40 would be, comfortable. Obviously, they want it more, closer to 40. But if we're talking like the 24, 28, the 30, that's not good enough. I've heard mid 30s would get schools to kind of really, a school like Arizona to really pay attention and, kind of think twice. But if ESPN comes back and they're offering, 28 to 30, I don't see why any of those schools are going to sign on into a deal that locks them into that.
How much of the fact that they had such a dip in distribution because of COVID, and then even last year, the Pac-12 network we know is a mess, how much does that make it even more desperate that number does go up?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it is a very big deal. I mean, when UCLA joined the Big Ten, the story was about UCLA's debt and how that's going to help them get out of it. But they're not the only school in debt. The Pac-12 lost quite a bit of money the last couple of years. These athletic departments, Arizona's is in an awful shape, but it's losing money. And football, at the end of the day, is what pays the bills. And so if the money is not there, it becomes a very, dangerous situation for these athletic departments. And so, if that number is lower than these schools want, it becomes something where all these schools kind of have to, look out for themselves and figure out what the healthiest situation is for their athletic department.
All right, Jason, I got another question for you. Let's say that for whatever reason, and again, it could be months down the road, who knows? We don't know. I mean, Big Ten, you would think that's coming out pretty soon. But let's say there is a wobble, and there's always this turf war between the Pac-12 and Big 12 fan bases, and even, as you know, even sometimes the media, which is sometimes it's silly, but people have what they love to protect. I hope both conferences survive. Is Arizona ready to pull the trigger? Because you kind of alluded to that to us a few weeks ago. Let's say the Pac-12 doesn't hear what they want to hear in the next month or two. Is Arizona ready to pull the trigger and join the Big 12 if offered?
I believe so. I think if the numbers aren't there, and from what I've heard, they may get an initial number, as soon as next week. And once that Big Ten deal, ESPN is basically waiting for that, and it can come pretty soon after. But I believe that if Arizona doesn't get a number that it likes, and Brett Yormark comes in there with Fox, whatever it may be, and says, you're going to make this amount of money, and it's a pretty decent difference, I think Arizona's ready. Now, if it's like a $2 million difference, I don't think that's enough. But if we're talking $5 to $7 million or $10 million, I think that's enough. I think it has to be enough for the travel and all that to be made up, and stability is also a big part of it. And so I think a lot of it is on Yormark's plate, what he can convince Arizona about their future and all that. But if these ESPN numbers come back a second round and they're not there, I think Arizona becomes very, very serious about making that jump.
Are they connected at the hip with anybody else left in the conference?
From what I understand, the Big 12 would love it if Utah came over as well. I don't think Arizona's as connected with ASU as I once heard, but I believe the Big 12 really would like to add Utah in that market. I also think that it feels if it takes Utah out of the Pac-12, that's a pretty killer shot. But, I'm still to believe that Arizona can't do it alone. There has to be at least one other Pac-12 school, whether that's Utah or ASU. It's got to be one other school. I would be surprised if there's a scenario unless and that goes back, if the money's that bad, I don't think it'll become an issue. I think they'll be able to get another school, but I don't necessarily know if they're completely tied to having it. I just think it'll naturally kind of happen.
Thank you for the time.